I just want to let it be known that I walk past this theater every single day on the way home from work, and every single day I'm like, I should finally make a video about Lea Michele. And today's that day. Let's go piss off some theater gays. Lea Michele is kind of on top of the world right now. She's been performing her dream role as Fanny Brice on Broadway in a revival of Funny Girl since fall of last year. She just performed at the Tonys, and she's apparently headed to another Broadway project after her current show closes. But I can't help but think about how we got here, because it wasn't easy. If your brain is as fried as mine due to the events of the last few years, you may have forgotten how much has happened with Lea Michele since her initial rise to fame on Glee. A 2020 cancellation, a meme about her possibly being illiterate, and one of the biggest casting scandals to rock Broadway in the last decade. In this video, we're going to unpack these events and assess the power of Lea Michele's redemption arc in the public eye up to this point. Is it working, or will her bad reputation always precede her? Before we get started, please follow me on my new Twitter. My old one got suspended because of a bullshit reason, and I'm going to keep saying it until I get all of my followers back. Thanks! So obviously the most logical place to start here is Lea's time on Glee. It's what propelled her into stardom in a lot of ways, but I think it's actually important to jump back a little bit in time to understand why Funny Girl is such an integral part of Lea's DNA, so to speak. Lea actually got her start as a child actor on Broadway, starring in various musicals before her time on Glee. According to a New York Times profile, one night she had been sulking in her dressing room during the production of Spring Awakening over an issue with a boy. And the show's director, Michael Mayer, suggested that she watch the movie Funny Girl, which she explained was about a performer learning not to let a man drag her down. From there, Lea became obsessed with Funny Girl, a movie that debuted back in 1968 with Barbra Streisand as its star. The movie tells the story of vaudeville comedian Fanny Brice and her fraught relationship with her husband, Nick Arnstein. Lea has never been subtle about her obsession and admiration for both Barbra Streisand and the role itself. According to the same New York Times profile, she actually told the story about her goal to reprise the role to Ryan Murphy over dinner one night. Murphy at the time was putting together Glee with Lea in mind for the role of Rachel Berry. And obviously this dream manifested in a few different ways throughout Lea's time on Glee. Not only is there a plotline where Lea's character Rachel stars in a revival of the show on Broadway, but Ryan Murphy at one point was determined to make this plotline a reality. In 2014, it was actually confirmed that Murphy bought the rights to the show with the intent to cast Lea as Fanny Brice. However, a Murphy-adapted version of the musical never actually materialized. All the while, Glee was doing, the Glee thing. It was everywhere for a long time, there were scandals, outlandish moments, and Lea was pretty much right there through it all in character as Rachel Berry. And I feel like while Glee was airing, there were rumors about her behavior on set, but nothing that was really confirmed. I mean, we were all so used to seeing her in character as Rachel that it wasn't a far cognitive leap for us to make in terms of her being a lot like Rachel in real life. But in 2020, a lot of the rumors about Lea Michele resurfaced after she tweeted in support of Black Lives Matter. Many of her black co-stars on Glee were quick to speak out about her treatment of them while on set. Most notably, Samantha Ware, who played Jane Hayward for 11 episodes on the show, accused Lea of telling her that given the opportunity, she would shit in her wig. A number of other folks who were on set during the show also corroborated reports of Lea's inappropriate and unprofessional behavior, often being rude, aggressive, and rather difficult to work with. Of course, given the context of the time and the way this all came out, the conversation surrounding Lea's microaggressions toward black cast members was front and center. Lea did eventually respond to these accusations the way that everyone does in a note on Instagram, saying the following.
When I tweeted the other day, it was meant to be a show of support for our friends and neighbors and communities of color during this really difficult time, but the responses I received to what I posted have made me focus specifically on how my own behavior towards fellow cast members was perceived by them. While I don't remember ever making this specific statement and I have never judged others by their background or color of their skin, that's not really the point. What matters is that I clearly acted in the ways which hurt other people. Whether it was my privileged position and perspective that caused me to be perceived as insensitive or inappropriate at times, or whether it was just my immaturity and me just being unnecessarily difficult, I apologize for my behavior and for any pain which I have caused.
Now, Lea is in an interesting position here because in terms of her cancellation, for lack of a better phrase, she couldn't exactly fall back on the classic excuses that celebrities tend to use. She was 22 when she started Glee. She was well into her 20s by the time of Ware's accusations, and at that age, in that environment, it really shouldn't matter. She obviously had to have known better by that point to not, treat people so terribly. She had to, in every aspect, own up to the things she did. It didn't matter how talented she was, it was clear that her behavior was unacceptable even for the star of a hit show, and that folks around her, not naming names, enabled that behavior for far too long. Following her cancellation, Lea faded out of the spotlight for a bit. She had a baby, was presumably enjoying motherhood out of the public eye, and people online debated whether or not the backlash she received in 2020 was too severe or not harsh enough. And then everything changed when a revival of Funny Girl was announced, not headed by Ryan Murphy or Lea Michele. In August, it was announced that actress Beanie Feldstein, who made her Broadway debut in 2017's Hello Dolly alongside Bette Midler, would star as Fanny Brice in the Broadway revival of Funny Girl, marking the show's first return to Broadway since Streisand originated the role in 1964. The new revival was slated to be directed by Michael Mayer, who previously won a Tony for his work on Spring Awakening, with a revised book by Harvey Fierstein. Now, I understand where this casting choice came from. Maybe not the choice to cast Beanie specifically, but at the very least, I do understand the position to not cast Lea Michele at this point in time. I know the timeline seems a little stunted, but this revival was in the works not too far from when Lea's controversy actually happened. It would have looked on the surface as if Broadway was essentially rewarding Lea for her bad behavior, which, they went on to do anyway, but in terms of optics, I get why it was a position they didn't want to take, because they thought it would hurt the show. But the thing is, Funny Girl is inherently a hard show to sell when the lead role is not being played by Barbra Streisand. I think I've mentioned this before, but I actually saw Funny Girl on Broadway with Beanie Feldstein last year. If you guys remember from my Taylor Swift Eras Tour video, my best friend Noelle, she was in town when all of the Funny Girl drama was popping off, and Beanie had announced that she was going to leave the show. Lea Michele hadn't been announced yet, and we decided that for the culture, we were going to go see the show. The show in its original iteration, from what I understand, and its more modern, updated iteration, is not very good. There really is no story. It's basically about Fanny Brice, and she kind of has no conflict outside of her, back and forth spats with her husband, but other than that, her whole problem is that she's super great and that she's a superstar and everyone loves her. And the show is really slowly paced. It goes on for way too long. I think some of the bits are funny, but the comedy is definitely very dated. It's just one of those shows that's about show business, and that's not personally very entertaining to me. What people go to Funny Girl for is the music and the standout vocal powerhouse lead role. And that's not what Beanie was cast for. I think Beanie actually did really well in terms of her portrayal of Fanny Brice in terms of the comedic stuff. I think she actually could hold her own in that way really well. I really enjoyed her comedic performance. Her vocals were fine. They were fine. I thought, I went into this thinking that it was going to be absolutely horrendous from what people were making it out to be, but she sounded totally fine. She sounded like she could hold her own, but for a show like Funny Girl, where the whole appeal is the vocal talent, I think she was a little miscast, and I think they did her a little dirty. I also think she was obviously set up to fail. She's not Lea Michele, and people definitely were quick to point that out when this casting announcement was made. There was also some rumor that this was a Nepo baby hire, and she was related to a producer who worked on the show. As far as I can tell, I don't think that's true. So in my opinion, she got the short end of the stick for sure. I can't tell you how her performance compared to Lea Michele's performance, obviously, because I have not seen Lea Michele in the role. I would assume she's probably more strong vocally, obviously. But tickets for this show are so goddamn expensive, and honestly, I don't think I'd want to sit through it again. It really is not my favorite show that I've seen. Now, obviously, we know how the rest of the story goes, right? The reviews rolled in for Beanie, they were pretty mixed, and Funny Girl got basically no nominations at the Tonys, which, as I spoke about already, I don't think it's entirely Beanie's fault, but she clearly got most of the blame. And when a show doesn't do well at the Tonys, that's pretty much a death sentence, because as opposed to something like a movie or TV show, a Broadway musical is a living, breathing thing in which a show's survival is entirely dependent on revenue and positive press. So in one last Hail Mary to save the show, the producers of Funny Girl do the only thing that they know will bring in ticket sales.
All right, next up, Lea Michele. Don't rain on her parade. The actress just landed the role of Fanny Brice in Broadway's Funny Girl, and it's a part 13 years in the making for her. We remember her take on Barbra Streisand's iconic character during her time in Glee. While the casting news comes just one day after current Fanny Brice, Beanie Feldstein announced that she would be departing from the show at the end of July. earlier than originally planned. Feldstein writing online that she had made the decision to leave the production. That decided to go in, quote, a different direction.
The internet exploded over this last year, mainly because people have such an attachment to the narrative of Rachel Berry as a character and by extension Lea Michele's life post-Glee. It was all playing out quite literally in a Hollywood fashion. Lea's most famous character played Fanny Brice in a fictional version of Funny Girl, and now she herself was going to get a chance at the role of a lifetime. And I have mixed feelings about this, because I've said this before, I don't like when shows close. I do not actively root for them to close because unlike other industries, that quite literally translates to a lot of hardworking creatives losing their jobs overnight. So I understand that this was a business decision. I get that they did what they had to do, but at the same time, it feels like since Lea took on the role, the Broadway world has been nonstop trying to make it up to her, and I don't think that's really necessary or justified. Just popping in before the inevitable 20 comments that I read about how I wish I was Lea Michele and that I'm jealous of Lea Michele, and that's why I'm being a hater right now. And to that I say, yes, I do wish that I was rich and famous and I had a lot of money. That doesn't absolve her of any critique though. Anyway, but I can't stop thinking about one particular moment of this year's Tony Awards ceremony that happened last week. Lea Michele, in character as Fanny Brice, closed out the broadcast singing the show's most well-known song, Don't Rain on My Parade. Now, not only have we seen Lea perform this song on TV multiple times, and she's great at it, don't get me wrong, but if you're unfamiliar, the Tonys usually reserves their performance spots for shows that are actively running or nominated on Broadway, unless it's like a special anniversary thing. You might also remember that the Funny Girl revival did not get nominated for much during the year that it was actually eligible. In fact, Jared Grimes, the one cast member who did get nominated for his performance, is obviously not in the Funny Girl number that was performed this year. And on top of that, Funny Girl, as I mentioned, was not eligible for the Tonys this year at all because it came out last Tony Award season. So I just found it really shitty and annoying that in a year of some really interesting and diverse shows on Broadway, we had to dedicate a closing performance slot to a show that is not nominated, was not even eligible, for an actress who has performed this specific song on TV a billion fucking times and did not even originate in the cast of said show, while the original actress was not given the chance to perform at all. But it's just a reminder that like all things, Broadway is a business, and Lea Michele was able to take herself from canceled and controversial to a solid portfolio investment. Is that fair? No, but it's show business. And I guess you could argue that it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I mean, many of Hollywood's brightest stars have been assholes at one time or another. But I just can't help but feel for Beanie Feldstein and everyone who had to endure Lea being a bitch on the cast of Glee. Especially because this clearly isn't the end of her redemption arc. Like I said, she's been teasing a new Broadway project and she's been popping up everywhere. She was recently on Carpool Karaoke with Darren Criss. She's ready to be fully back in the mainstream, and she certainly has the talent, no doubt, but it just bothers me how conditional so much of the celebrity facade really is. In any other business, if you act like a dickhead at work, you get fired. We see people lose their jobs on a regular basis for being racist or belligerent on camera, the same way we saw so many institutions, including Broadway, pledge to do better in terms of diversity and equity within the field. But this is what we get now. We get Lea Michele singing Don't Rain on My Parade every year on TV until we die. And I just wish I could say I was good with it, because yeah, the bitch can sing. And she'll probably at the very least get nominated for the next Broadway project she's in, and she'll probably win a Tony, and good for her, I guess. But at this point, I'm well aware that any cancellation, no matter how severe, is a mountain that anyone can overcome. If you're conventionally attractive and wealthy and you have a competent PR team and you're not Colleen Ballinger, because holy shit, have you guys been following that shit? That shit's fucking crazy. Anyway, maybe I'm being too cynical though, and I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, let me know what your favorite animal is. Mine is frogs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Barbra Streisand.